Miracle. It's a miracle. The Mets are selling the team. It's an absolute miracle. They're finally going to spend money. Yes, folks, the Mets have a new owner, and his name is Steve Cohen. Not related. Just by the way, you want to get that out there. Not related at all. But Steve Cohen is taking over as the New York Mets owner. Of course, hedge fund manager on Wall Street, valued at $13.6 billion. And he is the owner of what was SAC Capital and has now been renamed Point72 Asset Management. He is now the man that runs the show in the big town. Well, Met fans, today is your day. You have been waiting for this. We, as Met fans, have been waiting for this moment for a very, very long time. Let's be honest with ourselves first. Nobody in their right mind ever thought that this was going to be possible. Ever. But, as we now know, Fred and Jeff Wilpon are going to be selling the New York Mets, as they'll be selling them to Steve Cohen, the hedge fund manager, Wall Street guy, for around $2.6 billion, last estimate that I saw. So this changes everything for the New York Mets. This changes the complexion of the franchise. This changes the feel you have for this team. Everybody who is a New York Met fan feeling giddy, and why not? Because now the possibilities that the New York Mets are going to have an owner and an ownership group that is going to be willing and will spend money, and Cohen has said that he will spend money on this baseball team, something that has been a problem for the Mets under the Wilpons. And let's just be honest with ourselves here first. Now, before I go over the litany of things that have gone wrong with the Wilpons under their ownership of this team over the last, their sole ownership of this team over the last 17 years, the only thing that I will congratulate the Wilpons on is this. Thank you. Thank you for realizing that your ownership wasn't getting the job done. This is New York, okay? This is a New York-based baseball team. There is no excuse for a team like the New York Mets to be middling in just mediocrity. There is no reason for it to have owners that meddle in all baseball activities. There is no reason for a team that isn't to have a team in New York that's not going to spend money on players and go out there and make themselves into a big market team. Now they have a guy here in Steve Cohen who is going to put his money where his mouth is and put this team, hopefully, on the right track to success. Now, keep in mind, as we all know, that this is a takeover that's going to take, at least from reports anyway, at least 5 years. Now, is it really going to take that long? I think that's one of the big questions that a lot of Met fans have to have when it comes to this deal. Is it going to take really 5 years for Cohen to have full takeover of this team? Keep in mind, he is 63 years old. If we sit here 5 years, he'll be 68, pushing 70. He does have 7 kids. So it makes you wonder, if that's the case, if he were to wait 5 years, is this something that's really for his kids down the road? Do they have an interest in running this team at some point in the near future? I don't know. But the fact is, I think that this takeover could happen sooner rather than later. I have to agree with one of the hosts out there saying that it's hard to believe that Cohen would spend this kind of money, have this news go out there unless he's going to have some impact and say in personnel, for that matter, moving forward for the Mets, especially right away, at least within the next 6 months to a year. You would have to imagine he's going to have an impact in that regard. But, like I said, when you look back at the Wilpon run with the New York Mets, and all of it is going to be marred by what happened with the Bernie Madoff scandal back in 2008. That lasted really for about 4 years. And this team that ended up losing, and the Mets ended up losing around, $400, sometimes some people say $400, $500 million that were invested in that Madoff scandal. Then they had to pay off settle a lawsuit with Irving Picard for $162 million. And even though a lot of people say that it didn't have a direct correlation to the Mets' financial budget in order to go out there and spend on players, the way the Mets acted And the way the Wilpons acted from that time when the Madoff scandal happened all the way through now is they tightened up their purse strings. And they wouldn't spend on big free agents. They would let big names go out by the wayside. And when they did spend money, guys like Yoenis Cespedes, and I know Met fans love this guy, David Wright, like Johan Santana, long-term contracts. Big long-term contracts on players, and it would not pan out. And they would end up having to owe a lot of money near the end of the deal. And as we see here with Yoenis Cespedes, a situation where we may never see Yoenis Cespedes play for the Mets ever again, and he is going to be owed close to $29 million this year. And there may be a situation the Mets have to figure out some kind of settlement, maybe even file a grievance against Cespedes because of injuries that were not related to baseball in order to settle that contract. So that's the thing that always bothered me about the Wilpons. One, they really were never really committed to going out there and taking the extra mile to spend big money. This is not to say that the Wilpons didn't care about the franchise. They obviously did. And I'm sure for guys like Fred and Jeff Wilpon, this is a bad day for them because they did love this franchise. They did want to do the best they could for this franchise, but they just didn't really put the money in. They didn't really reinvest themselves as far as going out there and make that big trade when they needed to. You know, too many seasons have gone by here where the Mets would not make a deal at the deadline, or would let that big-name free agent go to somewhere like the Yankees or the Angels or the Dodgers or somewhere else. And like I said, occasionally when they did spend money, it wasn't spent wisely. So that's why the ownership of the Mets under the Wilpons has been so frustrating. And then you have a situation here over the last year and a half now, where you see the Wilpons bring in Brody Van Wagenen, really a novice general manager, a guy who was a sports agent for a very long time, very successful sports agent with CAA. They make him the general manager, and it has been nothing but a total mess. He has brought in guys who were past their prime, like Robinson Cano, made the big trade that brought in Cano and Edwin Diaz, who has been a complete and utter disaster. Cost the team Jared Kelenic, who is flourishing in the Seattle Mariners farm system right now. Really, almost every single move that Van Wagenen made last year did not pan out, except for maybe J.D. Davis. And now the Mets are entrusting him with the managerial search this year, ends up picking Carlos Beltran, and as we now know, Beltran could be in hot water right now with Major League Baseball over the Astros scandal, because he was a member of that team that supposedly cheated during the 2017 World Series run. So, as I said to one of my associates, Rick Laughlin, who is the editor of the Mets AMAZIN CLUBHOUSE on Maven.com, and I did a podcast with him. I will post the link here from earlier this afternoon as we talked about this move for the Mets. And one thing I brought up was the fact that if you had to take a look at some of the most bizarre things that happened over the last year under the watch of Van Wagenen, and also Van Wagenen, is the fact that everything was filtered through Jeff Wilpon. And you have the situation where you had Van Wagenen calling in to the dugout to levy instructions to Mickey Callaway and the coaching staff on player moves and pitching moves and what have you. So this kind of stuff, this kind of nonsense has to come to an end. And you would hope that with someone like a Steve Cohen coming in, that a lot of this stuff will end. And that's why you see somebody like a Brody Van Wagenen certainly going to be in a hot seat right now moving forward. Carlos Beltran, I know he hasn't managed a game. He's going to be on a watch list right now too, because these guys were not Steve Cohen's guys. He just came in here. He's eventually going to want his own general manager. He's eventually going to want his own manager. He's going to want to start paying guys that are producing and producing well. And that's what's going to happen here. And I hope, and I think that what Met fans hope for is, if you're a Met fan, you have to hope that this gets done sooner rather than later. That this deal gets settled, and that we see the full takeover sooner than 5 years. Because the Mets right now have a number of young stars right now in this team that are here to help this team win right now. And I'm talking about Jacob deGrom, who is, 32, pushing 33. Noah Syndergaard, who's getting to 30. And then you have, of course, the young first baseman coming off the Rookie of the Year award, in Pete Alonso. You want to really be in position to win right now. And if Steve Cohen is able to take the reins right now, and if he's allowed to take the reins right now, why not? What kind of owner is Steve Cohen going to be? We don't know. He is worth about $13.6 billion. He is a guy who, from everything that we've heard about so far, is that he is a very ruthless negotiator. He's aggressive. He gets what he wants. He doesn't like losing. And, of course, this was a guy who was patterned after the Damian Lewis character, Bobby Axelrod, on the Showtime series Billions. That character is absolutely ruthless. He is cutthroat. And if that's how Steve Cohen is, I don't know. I never met the guy. That is going to be something to watch, especially with the Mets. That's almost Steinbrenner-esque when you think about that from that standpoint. So that will be fascinating to watch when he finally gets full control of this team. But for right now, this deal looks like it's going to happen. We're hearing more and more stuff being leaked through the media now that, it looks like it's going to happen. Maybe it could happen sooner than 5 years from now. And there's also part of the reason why the Wilpon's selling, from what I saw here, apparently a rift between the Wilpons and their business associate Saul Katz, who they have been partners with for many years in owning the Mets. So that's why you have a guy like Steve Cohen, who had a 4% stake in this team since 2012, coming in and saying, hey, I want 80%, and he's going to get his. Now, here he is. He's on a precipice of owning one of the... And let's be honest with ourselves. It's the New York Mets, a premier franchise in Major League Baseball. Yes, we laugh about the Mets all the time. They aren't the Yankees. They don't have the championships like the Yankees do, or the Red Sox, or some of these other teams. But they are a New York-based franchise. They're a premier franchise in Major League Baseball. And now, for the first time in a very, very long time, they are going to be right there near the top of some of the top destinations for players to want to go to moving forward, hopefully sooner than 2025, and maybe even right now for that matter. We'll see how it goes. So the hot stove season kicks off as the Met fan gets exactly what it's wanted for a very, very long time. A new owner to run the New York Metropolitans. This is an exciting time for Met fans. We'll see how this team's going to get built over the next few weeks as the hot stove season kicks off. We saw the Mets make a trade with Houston for Jake Marisnick, who's a light-hitting center fielder, more of a defensive player, more of a role guy than a guy you want to see play every single day. He's like a 250 hitter, hit around 230 last year. You want to see him coming off the bench rather than starting 120, 125 games. So that's really their first move. Will they go in and dip their toe into the free agency? A lot of relief pitchers out there. We'll find out. A lot will be discussed in the coming days and weeks with the Mets. Trust me, you want to stay tuned right here to the Sports Talk Nation. We're going to talk about it. We will have special guests on to talk about this. But for right now, new owners. A new owner for the New York Mets. Much needed. Thank goodness. The Mets are on their way. And we'll talk to you next time right here on your home for everything New York sports. Michael Cohen. We'll talk to you next time. Remember, folks, to follow us on social media. It's Facebook.com/OpenMicProgram, @OpenMicNJ on Twitter. And also remember to like and subscribe right here to the Sports Talk Nation.